Mhm.
But what I've learned is when we set more specific goals, like we did with the educational team that I was working with, where we got sponsors, we were able to increase our enrollments. Like we made really specific goals, which we then formed projects around.
Mm.
And that helped us get where we wanted to go. We didn't just say
Right.
we want to do things better or like
Mhm.
we want to stay in business. We were really specific with them.
Yeah.
And that's how we were able to achieve them. So I'm sure you see that in your work too.
Or I think also accountability is super important in business, and people don't realize that you can find people anywhere to tell you yes and good and that looks nice and good job, but to find someone that actually cares enough to be critical about your situation is actually hard to find. I think
Yeah.
you can always find people to tell you yes and good job, but and I get people all the time who are like, well, I have family and I have friends I can talk with about my situation, and I don't know if I need a coach because I can just talk to those people. And I'm like, well, if you want to stay stuck where you are, that is fine.
Yeah.
Doing that, it's gotten you where you are, but like you say, that you have to be able to stretch and get outside of the comfort zone like that to make a change. All right, great. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today for another episode of Define Your Purpose. Purpose is the birthplace of ideas. And we have an amazing guest today for ideas. She is an expert in project management for business growth. She helps founders to optimize and accelerate their businesses. And she's a project management super coordinator out of Bentonville, Arkansas. Welcome, Kayla
Yes.
Maguire.
Hey, Carl. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Great. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it since we met a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and I know we've chatted on LinkedIn back and forth through comments. So, yeah, we've both been anticipating this. It's great.
yeah, definitely. I like to talk with people first kind of about how they got into doing what they're doing and what led them to where they are. So if I might ask, how does one get into project management in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we go way, way back, my interest has always been in entrepreneurship and building businesses. That's what, one of the main things that I studied when I was in college. And then I helped my uncle during college open a restaurant. And so that's when I became really passionate about how do you do these things and how do you like actually get things done, which I later learned you can do very effectively through project management. So
Mm,
my career, my background is in startups, and I've worked extensively in tech startup. And that's when I started learning about project management
mm,
as an actual thing,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And I said, this is so interesting because project management is sort of the way I naturally think and organize my work and break things down, but
Mm.
I didn't know it was an actual career path until I sort
Wow.
of fell into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I call myself an accidental project manager, but
Nice.
I'm also that's just who part of who I am and how I think. So it makes a lot of sense to mix those things together. And as you mentioned, now I help founders specifically optimize and accelerate their businesses using project management and, strategic project sequencing and things like that to really make sure that we're focusing on getting the right things done.
Awesome. So you say it's the way you thought to begin with. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
I think in a very I mean, even going back to my childhood, I played this game. I had like a pretend a family and group of friends that I would play with, and I would send them out with their tasks every day. And I would have a little clipboard and I would mark them off. Like that's what I played as a kid.
That's awesome.
And which is so, yeah, it's wild. It's just, I think in this structured kind of linear way, but I'm also very strategic about it. And when you learn more about project management, those are two things that are pretty important to have in a project manager, along with being people oriented, of course, and being able to communicate. But that's sort of like structured thinking, and then the strategy too, to make sure we can kind of pivot and shift when we need to get the right things done, along with the people skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are some of the skills that I've always had and have
Yes.
honed over time.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
That's really funny how it worked out like that. So you kind of hit the ground running and with setting up the business of the family store right away, and
Yeah,
um,
the coffee shop.
so
Yep.
it kind of necessitated what you were learning.
Yes.
Um, so how did you then get into starting your own company doing this? Did you work
Oh gosh.
for other companies as a project manager first, I guess?
So I had worked most of my 20s and my early 30s was with startups,
Hmm. Okay.
primarily with tech startups. So I kind of had this
Hmm.
background
Mhm.
in business startups, entrepreneurship, and things like that.
Mhm.
I had been working, this is 2020, I had been working for a tech startup. And unfortunately, we weren't able to secure another round of funding, as is very common in this world. And so we had to shut the doors. And that was
Mm.
February 2020, right before the pandemic.
Right.
And kind of coincided with some other life situations that I had going on at that moment. It was really a lot that happened when I got laid off from that position. And I was newly divorced, living in rural Arkansas with my daughter, starting over, and then I got laid off. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do here?" And then the pandemic hit, and I
Mhm.
thought, "Okay, this is something different is on its way."
Mhm.
And that's when I started blogging about project management and my experience. I had a friend who
Neat.
encouraged me to do that. I thought,
Mhm.
yeah. And then I had another friend who encouraged me to actually start creating videos.
Mm.
And I thought, that sounds like a horrible idea, but I'll do it anyway. I didn't know how to edit a video. I knew nothing about
Mm.
YouTube, but I
Mhm.
started putting myself out there kind of as a way to cope with some of the stress that I had at the time
Mm.
with the pandemic and my responsibilities. I thought,
Okay.
I'm just going to share about some things that I know and that I love and see what happens. And what happened was people started reaching out to me, and I actually started landing clients from my YouTube videos,
Wow.
which was
Neat.
pretty amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. So, what kinds of clients were coming in then? They were corporate people needing help with projects, or they were entrepreneurs?
Entrepreneurs, which is yes, which is one of the things that I've learned as I'm creating content. I know you're out there creating content too. My content, especially in the beginning on LinkedIn, was very specific and targeted toward founders of companies of a certain size who needed project management help or were struggling with getting the right things moving in their
Mm.
business, struggling with getting traction. And so that's who I spoke to through my videos. And it
Mm.
turns out that's exactly who I reached and who my clients ended up being, which has been a wonderful situation.
Awesome. Great. So,
Yeah.
how did you kind of come upon that niche then? How did you figure out that that's what you needed to make your videos about?
I made my videos about that because I had just come off this experience where I was working at a tech startup and I had gotten laid off
Mhm.
because we couldn't secure the funding. But
Mm.
prior to that, I was at another tech startup that actually bootstrapped their way to selling the business, which is every startup's dream, right? You want
Mm.
to build your business and sell it. And so I
Mm.
had these two back-to-back experiences which really defined the way I started thinking about not only my work, but project management, business building in general. And I
Mm.
started comparing and contrasting, like, why was this one business successful and this one wasn't? What do we do right? What
Mhm.
do we do wrong?
Right.
And I started talking
Mm.
about some of those things on my channel. And I think when you speak about things in a very specific, targeted way, you're just going to attract people who are experiencing or have questions of that nature.
Mm.
And it's almost like you speak the same language. So there's this
Right.
shared
Mhm.
understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like when you find someone who understands your problems that you're facing. It is almost like they're speaking your language, I think.
Exactly, exactly, and it gives you almost like an instant rapport with that person because
Mhm.
you have that same you're on the same level, right?
Mhm.
And so you don't have to explain all of this backstory or back information. You're starting out on the same level, and you can really offer more services, more help to people when you are at the same level and you're speaking the same language.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you work in all different kinds of industries now then, are you still focused in IT?
I I am a little all over the board,
Okay.
honestly. Yeah.
Fun.
I mean, I'm working with teams who are in food and beverage to teams that are, education, after school programs for kids. I do
Mm.
have a tech client as well, real estate. So it's really, like, all across the map. I think the common
Excellent.
denominator is the size of the company
Okay.
and the particular place that they're at, where they're really trying to make traction. They have people, but the people aren't getting things done. They're not
Yeah.
getting the right things done to make traction, or maybe they have more junior folks who need some more support, some more mentoring to really get things moving because they're ready to get to the next level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what are the big kind of concerns then that you look at? And I mean, when you work on so many different kinds of clients, I mean, do you start right away with the bottom line, or do you um, do you look at their day to day stuff, or how do you kind of what's your plan of attack? I wonder.
It's a really good question. I always start with trying to understand what the expectations are because
Mm.
it's interesting. You would think that everyone's goal is to make more money, but I've
Mm.
learned that that's not necessarily the case.
Mm.
So I want to understand from the founder's perspective what exactly they're trying to do
Mm.
and what the goals are, what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past. And then we could get in there and really start to do some discovery around, okay, is this a training issue? This is a common one I see. It's a
Mm.
training issue. You have junior staff that just haven't received the right training. And so if you throw all these tasks at them and expect them to get them done like you would a more senior person, they're not going to be able to do that because they've never done it before. So there's a learning curve. They need some mentorship. They need some support. That's a really big one. Strategic project sequencing, overall strategy, right? Like often founders will just say, I want to get all the things done.
Yeah.
Like we need to get all of these things done.
Right.
And the team will try to do that, but they can't because there's really no structure or strategy around it.
Mm.
So taking those ideas and forming them into projects and being strategic about those projects and the tasks within the projects really provides a lot of guidance for the team to actually get those things done. Yeah, and the biggest one is just the common. We have people, they're working, but they're not getting the projects done. Like the projects are
Right.
not being completed,
Mm.
and yeah, sometimes that requires a little bit of finesse to get in there and figure out why exactly that is,
Mm.
but it
Yeah.
could be a number of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like you almost have to wear a couple different hats. I mean, it's like you have to be kind of an HR person and kind of a leadership person at the same time, it sounds like, don't you?
It's true, and it's one of the reasons why I love startups and I love businesses, smaller businesses, because you do have to wear a lot of hats,
Mm.
and I know it's not for everyone because that can be actually stressful for some folks to be like, "I don't wanna switch hats. I wanna be in this lane and only in this lane." I enjoy it, but
Mm.
my background has been such to where I have been able to have my hand in a lot of those different places. So it's helped me learn how to do that.
Neat. Very cool. So that's kind of global thinking, I guess. Bigger picture.
Yeah, bigger picture, more like generalist versus specialist, I
Mhm.
suppose. And sometimes you have to put the specialist hat on. When I first started my work on my own, I was doing a lot more of pure project management type
Mm.
of work. And it's really evolved over time to this more
Hmm.
strategic coaching, consulting kind of capacity where I am wearing a lot of different hats, but it's taken some time to get there.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm sure. So you help founders get faster results. Is that kind of part of your tagline then? Um,
I help founders really get more efficient and
okay.
effective results, the results they want to get. Because, like I mentioned, I mean, not everyone wants to grow really fast. Not everyone wants
Yeah.
to just make more money.
Hmm.
I work with a lot of founders who are very purpose focused. Like I mentioned, my educational clients who are really focused on making sure that they make an impact. They want to make an impact, and of course, they want to be
Yeah.
smart about their resources and things like that.
Right.
But it's really about making an impact. So when I'm working with clients of that nature, I really need to make sure that I do understand what the goals are, what they're trying to do, and all of the different pieces of the business and the company and how they work together, because it's not just about making more money. Although, on the other hand, we know that cash is oxygen essentially for business. And if we're spending more than we're making over time, the business is gonna die. So we do have to be aware of that. But yeah, it really just depends on the founder and what their goals are.
Neat. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun.
So, what were some of the biggest lessons or maybe hurdles that you've discovered in your business now that, if you had to go back and kind of do things again that you might want to know or that might be helpful?
Oh my gosh. Well, like building my own business.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's always a learning curve, right?
Mhm.
we I think the most interesting one for me is um I have had to kind of like shift myself. And I think when I started out, I thought, okay, I'm going to be in this project management lane, and that's what I'm going to do is
Right.
project management.
Mm.
But like I
Mhm.
mentioned, it's really evolved, and that's been an exciting journey. But in order for it to evolve, I've had to try things that are scary. I've had to take on projects that I didn't feel 100% prepared for.
Mm.
I've had to really stretch myself and continually learn, continually grow. It's not like you just start a
Mhm.
business and you say, "Oh, I'm a project management consultant. I'm all set."
Yeah.
It's like you start a business and
Mhm.
that is your day one education that is going to
Mhm.
continue for the
Yeah.
duration of your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, I get that. Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel the
It's
same way about coaching.
it's right. You learn so much. And I feel like as a consultant, as a freelancer, a person that is on my own running this business, I learn more in like 1 year of my consulting business than probably five
Mm.
years of being an employee, because you have to get your
Yeah.
feet wet in so many
Mhm.
different things. Like we're out there
Mhm.
with the marketing, with the content creation, with building a website, with like it
Mhm.
helps me in my work because I'm working with founders who are building businesses. So I have my own experience building my own business, but at the same time, it's a lot. And
Mm.
I think one of the things that I would have done differently early on is get several mentors who had done what I had done, or
Mm.
maybe were a few steps
Yeah.
ahead of
Right.
me, because that didn't
Mm.
happen till like year 3 of my
Mm.
business. And I really felt alone and unsure of what I was doing for
Mm.
so many years of running this business. I
Mm.
was just trying to figure it all out on my own.
Yeah, and you probably didn't need to feel that way, I guess, huh?
Yeah, there's so many folks out there, which we know now on LinkedIn. That's one of the great things about LinkedIn is we can connect with other people who are doing similar things and have been there and can
Right.
offer support.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't do that in the first few years of my business, and it did affect me.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and people have done everything you wanna do. It's like people have already made all the mistakes, so
Yes,
why not learn from it and instead of recreating everything yourself. I
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about paving our own path and making
Mm,
our own way, and we have to stumble a little bit and make our
mhm,
own mistakes, but at the same time, like you said, there are people out there who want to help, who are willing to help. I mean, I'm one of them. I put myself out there on LinkedIn as a person who is more than willing to discuss some of the challenges that I had, some of the, I don't know, I don't want to say secrets that I know, but some of the things that, maybe are not obvious when you're starting out that will help
mhm,
you
right.
accelerate a little faster.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I I think there's a lot of this, kind of self-made in our culture that you have to do everything yourself to be an entrepreneur. You have to, uh, do everything, and it doesn't work, I don't think.
You will burn out. You will
Yeah.
absolutely burn out. And even when you see stories like that on social media or wherever it is, we always have to take those with a grain of salt because we don't know what exactly went into that. We don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I'm talking about my story, I try to be pretty forthcoming about the challenges that I've experienced and how it is a journey. It doesn't just
Yeah.
happen. You don't just wake up overnight with the clients. Like
Mhm,
it's a lot.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So, I wonder if maybe you'd like to share any, success stories that you've had with clients where you felt like you made a big difference?
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
any
I
come
have
to mind
one
off the top.
yeah, I have one client in particular. They do the camps for kids and after school programs and things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this one stands out to me just because the work they're doing, in my opinion, is very important.
Mm.
It's really important to have safe spaces for kids,
Yeah.
to have places they can go that are about building character and
Mm. Yeah.
being the best version of ourselves. So I'm really passionate
Mm.
about this project that I've been able to work on. And when I started working with this team, they were all really junior. Like this was the first job that they had, and they were
Mm.
building this business and they were doing well. Like they had camps and they had customers and people were coming, but there
Mm.
wasn't a lot of structure around it. And it was going to
Mm.
be really hard to grow that and open up in other markets without creating some structure with that. So I really took them from ground zero. I started out doing basic training basic training on like how to hold a meeting and how do
Mm.
we communicate with each very very basic kind of like business stuff, but
Mm.
it really impacted them.
Right.
And from there, they asked me to do even more work with them. And so we created some initiatives around where we wanted to go with the company over the next year.
Mhm.
And over about 6 months, we were able to achieve all of the things that we laid out because we used basic project management best practices, which was another thing I was really excited about teaching them. But
Nice.
they were able to land sponsors. They were able to increase their enrollments by like 50%. They
Wow.
were able to cut unnecessary expenses. We got people trained. It was just really good stuff all across the board,
Wow.
and I'm still working
Great.
with that team now. And it's exciting to see, to look back and say, "Oh my gosh, here's where we were on day 1, didn't even know how to hold a meeting. And now here we are just flying down the freeway and
Great.
getting ready to open up some new locations." So those
Wow.
those are really exciting stories.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
There's so much need now too. I think that some of the schools are in kind of rough shape. So
Yes.
that's great.
It's a kind of an interesting market, and I think when you do have a concept that is more structured, like we've created, it's
Mm.
parents are going to be drawn to that too. It makes it a lot easier for everyone all around. I know as a person that has a child in school, safety is a concern. There's all kinds of concerns that parents have.
Mhm.
And it's hard to address all of them, but it's also important. And that's what we've tried to do with this concept.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So, what are maybe some other industries that you have touched on that
Yeah.
felt like made a big impact?
Well, I have worked a bit in property management slash real estate. So
Oh,
I
neat.
did, yeah, I did have a client who has had a property management company, and we were able to he was able to sell it with some of the work that we did in terms of organizing the business and project management, structure, all of that stuff that I keep talking about, optimizing. He was in a position where he was able to sell it, which was a really exciting project to work on with him. But another reason why that one was so exciting to me is because I was an Airbnb host for about 6 years. I had my own Airbnb properties, so it was kind of fun to work on that project. While I had that experience, and he was managing these short-term rental properties, so
Okay.
that was another exciting one.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, but totally different, right? Totally
Mhm.
different from
Yeah.
education, and yeah.
So I guess your analysis of the client needs must be really important at the beginning, huh?
Really important in the beginning, yeah, because with the company, the educational company, that was really all about organizing, structuring, putting them in a position where they could grow.
Mhm.
Whereas the property management company was more about, we want to get organized so that we can sell, so that we can
Mm.
exit. So it
Yeah.
is different. It's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any common threads that you find among businesses that always need attention? In
Yeah,
this?
financial visibility.
Mm.
That is a really big one that I see with teams that are, especially teams that are kind of like in this 12 to 15 employee um, size. There's often not a lot of visibility
Mm.
into the numbers. And when I come in, of course, when I'm doing my discovery, that's going to be a question that I
Mhm.
ask is, hey, how are we doing with the numbers? Where are we at? Are we breaking even? Are we really, like, what's the situation? And often the answer is, oh, we don't really know, or we don't
Mm.
have up to date numbers. And
Mm.
you have to get that in place first. You have to really know where
Mhm.
you are with the numbers before we can make any strategic decisions moving forward. And I see that with just about every case
Wow.
that I work on. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I, I was also kind of thinking about common threads like that among clients. And I think a problem I see a lot is people not having goals and knowing where they want to be. I think it's like 80 something percent of American adults don't have goals. So
Yeah.
maybe you see that a lot, and what do you think is the importance of that? What difference does it make?
Carl, I think there's probably a lot of overlap with like what you do in coaching and what I do in my work, because
Yeah.
it's very similar, and it goes back to the expectations, because
Mhm.
sometimes that is the answer, is like, I'll say, okay, what are your expectations? Like, what do you want to get out of this arrangement, or where do you want to be in a year?
Mhm.
And they don't really know, right? They
Yeah.
don't really know. They haven't thought about that. They're
Mhm.
probably just trying to survive, is often what I
Right.
uncover, is like, we just want to keep going. We just want to get these projects done. Well, why do you want to get those projects done? Well, why do you want to keep going? I mean,
Mhm.
these are good questions to ask. And I
Yeah.
do agree that a lot of times there are not goals in place other than we just want to stay in business and be profitable.
Mhm.
But what I've learned is when we set more specific goals, like we did with the educational team that I was working with, where we got sponsors, we were able to increase our enrollments. Like we made really specific goals, which we then formed projects around.
Mm.
And that helped us get where we wanted to go. We didn't just say
Right.
we want to do things better or like
Mhm.
we want to stay in business. We were really specific with them.
Yeah.
And that's how we were able to achieve them. So I'm sure you see that in your work too.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if you're not specific about how you want things to be, then they're they're not just gonna get better.
Yeah.
Oh, better overall. I want everything to be better.
And people say that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I just want to be better. I want things to improve. And you're thinking, okay, I don't I don't know what that means.
Right.
We have to
Mhm.
kind of dig a little bit deeper. And you
Mhm.
do sometimes, I'm sure you've experienced this, you get people who are resistant to do that. And maybe it's because it's scary to them, maybe because they don't want to fail, maybe whatever reason it is, but sometimes people do. They get resistant to setting more specific goals, but we have to do that, and we often have to stretch ourselves too, because that's the other thing
Mhm.
I've learned is sometimes when people set goals, they're not really goals. It's just like the status quo. And I'll tell them that's not really a
Mhm.
goal. Like you're just
Mhm.
doing what you've always done. If
Mhm.
you want to
Yeah.
set a goal that's going to push you a little bit and
Yeah.
stretch you, because
Right.
that's how you're really going to make progress toward what you
Mhm.
want.
Yeah. Yeah, even in, I think, answers to questions, you can always ask people to dig a little deeper, like, are you just giving me the answer you think you're supposed to give me, or are you really giving me your answer and what you really think?
Exactly. Yeah, pushing people to really think and consider, it's important.
Mhm. Mhm.
These conversations are important. They're not always comfortable
Yeah.
either is the
Right.
thing for
Right.
both parties, but they
Mhm.
need to happen. And um yeah, when I work with people, that's what I often see they're kind of existing in a bubble. Maybe they're working with people they've worked with for a really long time, so they don't have these conversations that are really
Mhm.
pushing them out of their comfort zone. It is one of the benefits of working with a person who's coming in from the outside is that
Mhm.
perspective and the passion to really help you move to the next level. You often
Mhm.
can't get that with your team that's been in place for 5 or 10 years. You guys all know
Right.
each other. You need somebody from the outside that's going to come in with that, with a little extra nudge and some perspective.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or I think also someone, accountability is super important in business, and people don't realize that you can find people anywhere to tell you yes and good and that looks nice and good job, but to find someone that actually cares enough to be critical about your situation is actually hard to find. I think
Yeah.
you can always find people to tell you yes and good job, but and I get people all the time that are who are like, well, I have family and I have friends I can talk with about my situation, and I don't know if I need a coach because I can just talk to those people. And I'm like, well, if you want to stay stuck where you are, that is fine.
Yeah.
Doing that, it's gotten you where you are, but like you say, that you have to be able to stretch and get outside of the comfort zone like that to make a change.
Every time I've worked with a coach, it has changed me. Like, it's
Mm,
changed me,
right.
and it has gotten me to a different level.
Mm,
Every single time, even when, like, I've had a coaching relationship where I wasn't really a big fan of the person that I was working with, it still happened, and I mean, a
mm,
big part of that is that I was invested in the relationship and that
mhm,
I was ready and that I was putting in the work.
mhm,
And I think that is a really important point because you mentioned someone might say, "Oh, I have my friends, I have my family." Yeah, that's true. And maybe they're supportive and maybe they're, they help you, but there isn't that extra like a paid relationship. I hate to say that, but when it's a paid relationship too, there is a little bit difference in how serious you're going to take that and how serious you are about
Mhm.
your time. I think that says
Mhm.
something about a person. For you as a coach, for me as someone who is advising founders,
Mhm.
huge difference when I'm working with people just pro bono kind of a
Mhm.
situation versus
Right.
someone that really wants to have to make this a business relationship. It's different.
It is. It is definitely. I totally agree. Right.
Yeah.
You feel a huge sense of responsibility, I think, when it crosses that line to become the business relationship that you have to be accountable to that person and your reputation could be on the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, um, I I wonder uh, what it's like to work with you then, as someone just getting started. What could they expect in the first, few weeks? You come in and turn everything upside down, or do you have a
I
process?
hope not. I hope not. That sounds horrible for everyone involved, but no, the first step would always be to have a conversation and make sure that we're just a good fit in terms of how we communicate with each other.
Mm,
The second is that I'm gonna wanna do some discovery, and part of that is understanding where are you at? Where do you want to be? What are some general goals that we have here? So I could just understand what we're working with. I work I work with smaller teams, so I always like to get to know the people on the team because it's important to have everyone on board and everyone understanding why there might be some shifts and some changes in the way that we work.
yeah,
And the best way for me to do that, I've learned, is to get to know everyone and what their strengths are, what they like doing, what they're really excited doing. Do we have the right people in the right positions? Is
mhm,
a really big question
mm,
that I have in the beginning. And that doesn't mean like, oh, we need to fire a bunch of people. It
mm,
just means that we need to understand from their perspective, because often what I learn when I start speaking to the people that work there is maybe they're doing things that um, are not something that they're super passionate about, or they wish they were doing this thing instead. And we can do a little bit of shifting around
mm.
and figuring out how to fit those puzzle pieces together. What are some of
Right,
the things that aren't working? You'd be
mhm,
surprised how much you can learn just by sitting down and talking to people that are actually doing the work,
right,
and asking them what's working and what's not, and what ideas do you have. I
mhm,
love asking that question
mm, yeah,
because you get so much amazing feedback from folks that are actually doing the work.
mhm,
And often we implement a lot of those ideas or suggestions that they have to help smooth out the workflow, to help actually get things done, to move in the right direction. So that's a big piece of the puzzle, is the team. And then the second, of course, is going to be the systems that we use, the processes, the systems. Uh, are we using a project management system at all? Do we need one? Is this one working
mhm,
for us? Could we set it up in a different way that would help us in a different fashion? Those are the two big pieces. And then I do also look at, do we have a PMO in place or some sort of structure and process around how we get our project work done? Because there needs to be a shared language and understanding of what does it mean when we have a retrospective or a blocker, or what is risk management? Do we have these general basic practices and processes in place so
mhm.
that our team can use them effectively? Those are going to be the big pieces that I look at in the beginning.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know project management has a very proven, methodology you follow, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
When you work with the business, what are some of the steps, and how long does the process usually take to go through?
So, project management is initiation, planning, execution, and closing. And within those phases, those are the 4 phases of project management. And that's always going to be the case.
Mhm.
There are, of course, different methodologies and strategies that we can use, like if you've heard of Agile or Scrum or this, that, and
Mhm.
the other.
Mhm.
I'm or Waterfall. I'm a hybrid person, so it really depends on the type of company and the type of projects that we're working on as to what those specific methodologies are going to be. But it's always going to be initiation, planning, execution, and closing. We're always going to have those 4 phases. And then within those, we can add flexibility and process and structure in a way that makes sense for that particular team and what they're trying to
Awesome.
accomplish.
Awesome. That's really neat. You have all the different types that you kind of choose from. I don't know if all PMs do that. I think some of them just kind of adhere to one methodology, don't they?
Some do, and I think that comes along with maybe the line of work that they're in has been less flexible with those things. A lot of the PMs that I work with are moving towards a more hybrid approach like this because we understand that our work is dynamic, our projects are dynamic. We need to be more open-minded and not so closed off to like there's only one way to manage projects because that's not true.
Mhm.
It does depend though, and that's where that discovery comes in and it's really important.
Awesome. So, how should someone get in touch with you if they want to hear more about this or maybe get started on the discovery process?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Kayla Maguire on LinkedIn. You can also find me on my website. You can reach out there. It is kaylamaguire.com. So I made that really easy for you. And those are my 2 locations where I am. Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. Um, was there anything else you wanted to get to today? Maybe I didn't ask you about, or some things you had in mind from our conversation before.
I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is that I do offer coaching to project managers who are interested in launching their own consultancy, who are interested in going into freelancing. I do offer coaching sessions for that, and you can find that on my website as well. It's kaylamaguire.com. Um, yeah, that's it for me.
That is a great resource. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that as well.
yeah.
Well, you have a lot of blogs you say we could check out on
I have
your site?
blogs, I have endless content on LinkedIn, I have over 200 videos on YouTube. Oh, I forgot to mention my YouTube channel. It's Kayla Maguire as well.
Okay,
So yeah, you can find me in any of those places.
fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad we got to talk today. Thanks for taking the time.
Me too.
Um, I like to say when you walk with purpose, you collide with destiny. So
I love that.
thanks.
That's so good. Did you make that up? Is that yours?
Just something I read somewhere.
Okay, I love it. Yeah.
Well, let's stay in touch too. Maybe we could chat again and let me know how things are going this year with your company and everything.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to hear from you as well.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Sounds good. Well, have a great week, Kayla. Thanks again for everything, taking the time.
Thanks, Carl. See you soon.
Hey.
Okay, bye.